welcome to the latest episode of Surroundscapes, where Bluesound Professional dives into the technologies and trends making headlines and causing conversations in the world of commercial AV, including case studies and unusual applications of AV technology, as well as technical reviews and troubleshooting with emerging technologies like Power over Ethernet and decentralized networks. My name is Graeme Harrison, and I'm the General Manager of Bluesound Professional. And in today's episodes, I'm focusing the spotlight on one of our valued partners, in this case, Xyte. Xyte is a relatively new company providing very innovative remote monitoring and control capabilities that are available to any manufacturer in the AV industry. Bluesound Professional partnered with Xyte to offer this remote monitoring and control capability to both integrators and end users who want to see and control their units without necessarily being within the network that they're installed in. This was a big request from our customers, and rather than making our own system, we turned to Xyte. In this podcast, I'm talking to Omer Brookstein, the founder of Xyte, about all aspects of Xyte, its past, its present, and its future. It's a fascinating view into an area of AV that's increasingly talked about and requested. And so welcome, Omer.
Thank you so much for having me, Graeme. It's a pleasure being here today and speaking with you again.
It's great to see you. I've known you for a long time now. So can you tell us a little bit about your life before Xyte?
Yeah, it seems a long time ago, but like I think many others in this industry, I was in a way born into this industry and raised into this industry. My family and my father owned a system integration firm in Tel Aviv in Israel, and I think the first time you and I met was sometime in Portland 20 some years ago when I kind of joined the family business. Since then, I became a Crestron developer, and I spent most of my career working with and for Crestron. I worked for the company for many years and then co-founded their office in Israel when I worked very closely with system integrators, AV consultants, obviously large enterprise customers before I founded Xyte.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you spent some time over here and then back in Israel. And as you mentioned, your father used to distribute Biamp, a company I used to work for before we founded Bluesound Professional. And so, yes, I've known you for a long time. But what led you to found Xyte? You had a career in Crestron, you were doing well. What led you to strike out and do something by yourself?
I think that it's a great question. I think that at Crestron I was always very happy. I just wasn't satisfied in a way. And what I did, in my last role, I overlooked all the technical aspects of the local office in Tel Aviv, but I also sold to enterprise customers, companies like EMC Dell, McKinsey & Co., Applied Materials, and many, many others. And more often than not, they used to come back to me and say, we love the hardware, but the software is not what we expected. And at the time, I realized, and many things have changed since, or developed since, but at the time, I realized two main things. The first one is, there's need to be, there must be a better way to manage this great gear. And what all the companies, or many of the companies in our industry do, is they do an amazing job developing state-of-the-art hardware. But it turns out that it takes a very different skill set to develop hardware and modern SaaS and cloud applications. And the other thing I realized is that as devices across any industry, and this is not unique to the audio-video industry, as devices being commoditized, device manufacturers must opt to more cloud services and software offering for their customers. As the customer, and you briefly mentioned before, are looking for a more holistic solution, not just buying the hardware, but buying a solution that includes the hardware, the software, and the services. And I believe that it does, and I still do, it doesn't make sense for device manufacturers to develop one-of-a-kind cloud platform, but rather take something off the shelf. And I knew that we can build a platform that will be completely agnostic and will be able to serve device manufacturers across any industry, and especially in the audio video where I came from.
So, forming your own company is a fun thing to do. I did it, I think, about the same time as you, actually, except I'd been working in the industry a lot longer. And my only regret actually is that I didn't do it earlier, because it's a blast doing a startup. It's got its own set of challenges, and the successes are more gratifying, and the failures are more frustrating and hurt you more if it's your own company. One of the things when I formed Bluesound Professional that we tried to do is really hone what it was that we did that no one else was doing. What was our elevator speech, and ours is one sentence: making the world's first and only streaming audio platform for commercial audio installations. What would you say is the real unique value of Xyte?
So I think Xyte does a few things in a very, very unique way. Well, first and foremost, when you look at Xyte from the device manufacturer's perspective, I really do think that we are creating a completely new product category. There's no other solution like Xyte out there. And what's unique about Xyte is that there are many business platforms out there, such as Salesforce and SAP, Oracle, and many ServiceNow, many others. And there's also plenty of IoT platforms out there, infrastructure like Azure and AWS IoT, and some higher level IoT platforms as well. But what Xyte is unique is that it is the first business platform, or the first, I call it purposely designed platform for device manufacturers or B2B device manufacturers with a business value. We don't focus on the telemetry or the widgets that you get from your devices like all other IoT. Of course, we have that, but we actually rather focus on what's the business value for Bluesound Professional, right? How can you gain visibility to your value chain? How can you better collaborate and interact with your customer system integrator? So, what we often hear from our OEM customers is that the reason why they choose to work with Xyte is because we're the only one understanding their value chain. We're the only one understanding how an OEM sells to a distributor, to a reseller, to a value-added resellers, and eventually to the customer. And we build that ground up to the platform. The other unique aspect is the fact that we've designed Xyte to be a collaborative platform, once again, from ground up. So it's not a siloed solution, and we'll see that, I guess, in a couple of minutes. It's not a siloed solution just for specific device manufacturers, and then some management platform for a specific system integrator for specific end customers, but rather an infrastructure or a platform that enabled your system integrators to collaborate with their end customers and to collaborate with you and share insights and support tickets and data to make everything more frictionless as the day-to-day work life.
Yeah, a number of those things were what led us to you, because, as I mentioned, we were asked more and more for remote monitoring capabilities, both monitoring and first level support and control. And we had a number of options, one of which was to do it ourselves. But a lot of the time we're in systems with a lot of other equipment. And it seemed to me that the real value was to support a platform where an integrator or an end user could have one platform that would support all of the devices in the system, not just our devices. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to you, as well as the fact that you were focused on the commercial AV sector. That there are several solutions that are focused more on the residential sector, but the commercial sector was important to us. And there are a couple of other things that I want to talk about later. But having had this idea to do this and a clear vision of what you wanted to do, how did you do it? I mean, how did you build the team to develop the platform?
I remember the first day when I had an angel investor coming to our office at the time, and I drew on a whiteboard sort of a Venn diagram trying to explain how this industry is working. But quite frankly, like how any other B2B industry is working, with the different stakeholders that play in the industry. So we started with a very basic MVP, a minimal viable product. I actually hired 2 developers, part-time from Europe, and I founded that from my own resources to first see if there is a very basic and initial product market fit. And we started talking to some industry colleagues to see if what I think is a great solution, if they also believe it's a great solution, and trying selling that. And I think a pivotal moment at the time was that I reached out to a system integrator, an audio video system integrator. And at the end of the conversation, he was like, forget about all of that. I need that platform for a completely different thing and a completely different industry and product they developed. And at that point, we realized it is agnostic to the industry. At that point, we realized that the potential of that is to go to any connected device out there. And at that point, we felt confident enough to go and raise funds for that. And we started meeting with different VCs, venture capitalists in Tel Aviv and globally. And for those listening that are experienced with raising funds, it's quite a challenge trying to explain what we do in a pitch elevator in 2 minutes, right, and get the attention. And we were very lucky to partner with the Sequoia partners in Israel at the time, which they saw the vision that we saw in that. They saw the vision of devices needs to be better managed, and devices and device manufacturers must opt to new business models to stay in business. And that's how we started. So we raised our first $6.5 million from the Sequoia people in Israel, and we started building a team. And we started getting our first customers to the platform, and we're very fortunate to partner with you and Bluesound. You were one of the first partners to work with Xyte. And one thing led to another. We built a team. We hired some of my colleagues in New Jersey and built a go-to-market team in the US. And then Intel Capital came to us, and BlackRock came to us, and Samsung came to us. And while most of the things, or many of the things, weren't clear at that point, it became clear and clear that there is a need for such a platform. And every device manufacturer we met, even if it was at that time, was still difficult for us to articulate that in a short phrase what it is that Xyte do. They, after spending some time with us, they understood the value of the platform and the potential of the platform. And ever since then, we built the team. We have an office here in Mountain View in California. We have an office in New Jersey, and obviously our headquarters or an R&D development office in Tel Aviv in Israel. And remaining focused on the audio video. That's where we see the most success, and getting more and more system integrators, customers, and OEM to the platform. And we'll see that in a few minutes, but creating this ecosystem for everybody to benefit from.
So one of the things that my next question was going to be, how did you build business? But you've kind of answered that anyway, and it sounds like getting funding wasn't as difficult as it might have been. One of the other things that really drew me to you guys early on was the security elements of it all. So particularly in the commercial AV space, and this is where it differs from the residential solutions, we're asking for access to corporate networks. There are all sorts of safeguards in place, rightly, in those corporate networks. And again, we could have developed something, but having someone who'd already done that and who'd already looked at those challenges was really attractive to us. How did you, that must have been a big job to get the security certifications and to get the thing working properly so that the corporate world would trust it. How did you go about that?
Yeah, so it's a very heavy lifting. It's a big job, but more than that, it's an ongoing job, right? We go through the SOC 2 Type 2 auditing, for example, with Ernst & Young constantly, and annually we're going through the process, and we go through penetration test, pretty much every month. So it's a great investment. And we knew that from the beginning, because once again, when I was working for Creston, I used to sell to these large enterprises, and I knew what it means. So first of all, when we designed the platform, we designed it as a native IoT platform, meaning that all devices go out from the local network to our cloud solution, and there's no need to open any kind of ports or do any kind of special configuration in the local network, like sometimes is acceptable in residential installation, but is never acceptable in large corporate network. Then we once again started the SOC 2 Type 2, which is the most commonly known certification auditing process in the industry. And it's usually the number one thing that enterprise customers are asking for. Obviously, privacy is a big thing, especially as we're working or servicing European customers as well. So GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, all those penetration tests that I mentioned before. And I would also say that, to your point, yes, I mean, you can develop that, right? Or any device manufacturer can develop that. But there's two challenges there. The first one is, is that really your core competency? Is that really the best, use of your resources? And, one could argue that Salesforce is just a bunch of SQL tables, but yet you don't develop your own CRM. In most cases, you buy a CRM because that allows you to focus your resources on developing your real product you're selling. And the other thing is that, in many cases, in the Xyte case as well, software could seem easy to do, but turns out it's very, very difficult to do. And the analogy I always use is that of a mountaineer, right? You start with getting a device and the monitor in the cloud, so you climb the first peak. But then when you get to the first peak, you say, oh, now I have to take care for the security. And now you're going through a very pricey, once again, SOC 2 and penetration test. And now you have to develop integration. And I have to build all of that for European customers. And from something that could seem like a relatively small project, very, very quickly, it's becoming a very, very complex project. And also, like you said before, it will be a siloed solution of a single device manufacturer, which is never the case, especially in this industry. So I think security is a big one. Xyte was developed for that, and it's taking away all the risk and all the cost associated from all the device manufacturers using that.
Yeah, it was certainly all of those things came into play when we were looking at it all. And I was actually doing another episode of Surroundscapes just recently on decentralized systems. And one of the things that we do a lot of the time is put all of the intelligence into the loudspeakers. So we're basically going away from a central processor and lots of endpoints, dumb endpoints, to smart endpoints. And that really plays well into the monitoring conversation, because then you can monitor your endpoints rather than just monitoring a central device and not knowing what's actually happening at the end. So this was a particularly good fit for us. And obviously in our world where we're dealing with music services, we're dealing with control systems, we're very, very familiar with dealing with partners that are supplying content or software. And it's really what we're all about. Our hardware is meaningless without everyone else that we interact with. But one of the challenges, and to be honest, I had it for probably a couple of decades at Biamp, was this move from hardware-focused industry to a software-focused industry. And it's so slow. It's happening so slowly. I think particularly at the integrator level, maybe because I work for a manufacturer, that I think that maybe it is at a manufacturer level. But we are adjacent to an IT industry where all of the value is added in the software layer and software as a service, recurring revenue. And still our industry is predominantly around selling hardware and making margins on hardware. And being honest about this, even with Xyte, it is proving somewhat difficult to get people used to paying a monthly fee for something rather than just buying a box and not paying anything more until they need another box or a replacement box. How are you getting people over that hump? Because that's a hump that our whole industry needs to get over.
Well, first of all, I think change is difficult, right? It's always difficult. And even if you look at the software, we're looking back now, it seems like, the entire software industry is SaaS, right? That's easy. It's never been easy. If you look at how long it took Microsoft to follow, Google with G Suite and Office 365, I think it was over a decade. It took a long time. It took many, many years to Adobe to transform from selling a perpetual license for, I think, $2,500 or quite a lot of money to selling Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop for 6, 10, 12, whatever dollars a month, right? So it takes a long time. The other thing I would say that, yes, the hardware company, maybe the audio video industry specifically, is a more conservative industry, but I think that we're starting seeing the change, and mostly in the unified collaboration. If you look at a video conference in a few years, right, you used to buy a very expensive MCU and install it, right? And what you have today is software-defined experience that Microsoft Teams or Zoom running on those, Zoom and Teams rooms. And when you look at those Zoom and Teams rooms, to be honest, many of them have been commoditized to be a speakerphone today, because the brain in the room is the software, right? And I think what the audio video industry and the device manufacturers mostly have to do is to make sure they don't fall into the same mistake that happens in the video conference and those companies that became, speakerphones essentially for those software. And that's what Xyte is really trying to help device manufacturers. Because as we discussed before, I really truly believe that device manufacturers across any industry, but speaking of the audio video, must transition into selling solution rather than just boxes. Because if you take the software away from Bluesound Professional speaker, like you said, it's a speaker. The uniqueness is the software. The uniqueness is the solution. The uniqueness is the service around it, what you offer. That's why solution like Xyte enhance the Bluesound Professional experience for your system integrators and customers, I believe, and make it a better solution. That's what Xyte is really, made up to do, to help device manufacturer better interact, better service, create more sustainable and meaningful customer relationships. And I do strongly believe that, more and more subscription will follow. It's not going to be entirely, completely hardware as a service. I think that's a very heavy lifting to do, but we're starting to see more companies designing, for example, Dante channel that you can buy aftermarket. It can be a one-time license or a subscription. And I think the driving force for that are two driving forces, actually. The first one is that device manufacturers must develop new recurring revenue, simply put, to stay in business. The other thing is that the end customers, they're actually, forcing these device manufacturers to do so, because in many cases it's easier for them to buy from them for their Opex budgets versus the Capex. And I talked to a friend this morning, and we discussed the example of digital signage, and I think that's just a great example, right? But it's the same thing with with music as well, because when you buying a digital signage, you never want to buy the display or the player, right? What you want to buy is the signage service. Then you kind of have to buy the display, right? But if I can just buy the service and someone else will take care for the display, the player, and everything else, as an end user, I'll definitely appreciate that. It'll be a lot easier for me to pay for that over time. I think it's the same thing with conference rooms, the same thing with audio and music. And end customers more and more opting to buying Capex over Opex over Capex.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that Capex to Opex point, but you've already answered me. And I remember as you were talking, I remember being at TED in, I think it was 2011 or something, and chatting to Jeff Kowalski, who was a CTO at Autodesk. And Jodie Foster, actually, who was kind of in a very TED way in this conversation. And I asked him whether he had 5 minutes to talk to me about Autodesk's move from selling CDs in a box to selling SaaS to selling time on their servers. And basically a thin client interface, and really the computation's being done on their servers, particularly in the 3D domain with Revit. And it was a fascinating conversation. I said to him, look, have you got 5 minutes? And I know you may not be able to tell me stuff. And an hour later, he told me all sorts of things, including what test markets they used, how it had helped them with piracy issues they were having. And it was just a fascinating conversation. Something you talked about, and you threw a word in almost unthinkingly that I want to explore a little bit more. So you talked a lot about solutions, and we in our industry moved really from product to solution probably about 20, 25 years ago. A product being a box that someone buys, a solution being a collection of products that does something. And certainly, like your dad's company as a distributor in Israel would look to build a portfolio of products that together would provide a solution to the integrator that they could offer to the customer. A thing that frustrates me a lot at the moment is our industry is having the hardest time moving from solutions to experiences, because a customer doesn't care about a collection of boxes, a solution. They care about the experience. How is it for them to interact with this stuff? They really don't care. It's almost like when I get in my car, I don't care what's going on under the hood. I just want to get in and press the accelerator and go fast. And that's what most of our users want, and that's what they should want. We as an industry get really obsessed by the gear we make and all the technologies underneath the gear that we make, and we don't talk to customers in terms that customers can understand. How do you feel that what you're doing as an overlay over what the hardware manufacturers that you partner with, and I know it's not only hardware manufacturers, and we're going to go on and talk about that in a minute, how do you think that pushes that conversation forward?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I think we have to remember that we're just most of us at least are techie nerds, right? And we get excited about the technology, but like you said, no one cares about it, right? And I love this audio video experience, but in the same way as you said, I don't care when I walk into my car. I just want it to drive. And when I moved here to California, we bought two cars, a Volkswagen and a Tesla. And to your point, the experience, the Tesla, I think the Volkswagen makes a better car, right? But the Tesla experience is just so much better because it's so much, just integrated and much better designed and built. And I think a big part of that in our industry, and when we going back to the video conferencing and unified collaboration discussion from earlier, conversation, when we failed as an industry, to be honest, is making a standardized solution. One of the things I always battled my system integrators of working at Creston is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel whenever you get into a corporate room. It has to be the same thing. And because we failed as an industry, then Microsoft and Zoom came and just took over the interface and made it maybe not as good as we thought we could make it, but a lot more easier, right? But we keep making this, we keep making those failures all the time again, and trying to build our own very unique thing. And what Xyte is trying to do is to create a standard. Because if you're looking at what we do, that overlay, I think for an IT administrator, for system integrator that is trying to manage multiple devices for multiple brands, working with 5, 6, sometimes 20 different software solutions to be able to manage everything, while in reality, it makes no sense to have different solutions because they all eventually need kind of the same thing. It's a pain in the neck, and we're making it a pain for them once again. And if we as an industry can't solve that, then they'll find other solutions. And when they find other solutions, like the Microsoft Teams and Zoom example, then we're left out. And what we try to do at Xyte is to create this standard and make it easier for them, more enjoyable for them. And one of my favorite comments I get from enterprise customers and system integrators and device manufacturers sometimes as well, when they're talking about Xyte, they're saying it's a platform you want to live in, right? And we invest a great amount of resources in building the most streamlined and fun user experience in a rather complex B2B platform. And we really see ourselves as, once again, an infrastructure open for everybody. Everybody can play. And I really do think everybody benefit, right? The device manufacturers benefit, the system integrator benefit from a better solution. Obviously, the end customer benefit from a better solution. So when I see a device manufacturer saying, I'm going to build my own, I just grab my head. I was like, I think you're missing it, right? Because you're making your customers miserable. And you're not focused about making them happy. And you need to make your customers, we all need to make our customers happier. I think that's the key. And it comes down again to standards. Just look at standards outside of the industry, the Ethernet standard, right? Cisco could develop their own protocol and HP could develop their own protocol, but the fact that there's a standard makes it so much easier for the IT, and maybe you get a smaller slice of the pie, but the pie in general is much bigger, right? And everybody benefit. And we need to do the same thing in our industry, and I think we are hopefully getting there.
Yeah, I think, that's an interesting one. So yes, I too moved to a Tesla. I have since, for reasons totally unrelated to the car, moved from Tesla to Polestar. But going to a Tesla was a very different experience, and the user experience is excellent. And you mentioned Ethernet as a standard, and you're too young to remember, but before that, IBM had token ring. Ethernet wasn't the first; it was just the open standard. And another thing that I feel our industry needs is open standards, and this has been another kind of real passion of mine for at least over a decade, nearly 2 decades, and we haven't got there yet. On either the media protocol or the control layer protocol, we're still far away from that. You teased a little bit about fun, place to be, and I want to get to a demo. But before that, what I want to do is bring us up to date to today with Xyte. And as you've rolled out functionality into the product, after the demo, I want to talk to you a little bit about the future and where you see that. But before we go in there, what are some of the latest features that are existing in the platform right now?
Oh, so one of the fun things as a software company, other than going to trade shows such as ISC in a couple of weeks with a laptop pretty much and not carrying all the gear behind us,
I wish I was you.
is the pace of innovation, right? And sometimes I see what our team in Israel are doing, and I just can't believe it, right? We push new updates to the platform sometimes twice a week to a point where, our customers are excited about it. But I'll say, hey, it's a little bit too fast for us in some cases. But most recently, I think the biggest announcement was around Connect Plus. Connect Plus is our that ecosystem of single pane of glass where you can monitor Bluesound Professional speakers next to your Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Legrand devices, planar displays, Avocore, and so on, making it so much easier for system integrators, managed service providers, and end customers. Another big update that we've built, making a new hierarchy in our tree, which I'll show you in a second, make it so much easier for system integrators to manage multiple customers across multiple sites, really manage any device from everywhere. One of our most used feature by system integrator is a way to securely tunnel to devices remotely. Some of our vendors implemented that, and we see customers use it all the time to configure the very little things in the devices remotely. And the big focus in ISC in a couple of weeks now are going to be on Xyte becoming the first managed services platform for the industry. And as part of that, we're adding new capabilities for asset management and different trackers to track service contracts, warranties, room refresh, and so on, making it a better and more robust tool for those system integrators to manage all of their customers and assets in a centralized location. So I think that kind of covers, but there's so much more other things that are coming to the platform. I'll show you some of them in the demo in a second. But
that's actually fascinating because, again, that central repository for documentation, version tracking, that sort of thing, again, was something that we were thinking about a long time ago. And to move from a functional-based software ecosystem to a time-based software ecosystem was something that I think is a really ripe opportunity. And I haven't seen your that functionality within Xyte yet, so I'm kind of excited to see it. So we've been teasing people a little bit, so let's turn it over to you and let you demo what customers can expect.
So there's so much to show, and I do invite everybody to come and visit us at ISC or set up a demo session following this podcast. But I'll show you just some of the high-level features. So the first one is, and I just mentioned it briefly, we've made it a lot easier for system integrator to manage multiple customers. So as you can see here, it's a demo account, obviously, but I'm AV Services Inc., and I'm managing multiple customers, Salesforce, Red Ocean Industries, Penn State University, and Starbucks, and I can very easily add a new customer. Now, those customers define the access rights as well, so I can give access to those customers' IT teams only for their specific accounts, obviously. I can also manage multiple connectors based on the account, so Salesforce will have a different Microsoft Teams or Zoom account versus the Red Ocean Industries and so on. So that's one thing we've added recently. The other thing we've added recently as well is, as I discussed before, is Connect Plus. And what Connect Plus is really doing is getting all the siloed cloud solution into a single pane of glass for the in-house IT teams and AV and UC teams, as well as the system integrators and the managed service providers. And what we did, we worked with all of our vendors to bring their devices into that single interface, as well as developing unique cloud-to-cloud connectors to get other devices into the platform. Now, in a couple of weeks at ISC, you will see more vendors on the Connect Plus interface. But as you click the Connect Plus icon, what you can see from here is that you can very easily connect with multiple brands and have their devices claimed in the same interface. So obviously, Bluesound Professional here, Planner and Avacor for displays. Legrand for PDUs, AV over IP devices, Crestron, QSC, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, BrightSign for digital signage, and many more are coming and being added really daily. And once I connected with those devices, I can very, very easily claim a new device using the device MAC address or some other unique ID. So I'll simply click that claim device. I'll choose the vendor I would like to claim the device from. You can take a look at the Bluesound Professional. I'll choose the model that I'd like to claim, and I'll put in the unique ID that I have usually printed on my device. Once I do that, as I click the device, and with a Bluesound Professional device here in my Salesforce cafeteria, I'll see a detailed dashboard with all the information coming from this device and all the commands that Bluesound Professional put into the device through Xyte and enabled me to administrate remotely. So that makes it not only into a monitoring tool and that enables me to integrate and get proactive notification on my Microsoft Teams, Slack, ticketing system, and so on, but actually a control tool that I can remotely support my customers. So as you can see from here, I can change the preset, I can change the volume, I can push firmware updates. So I have all those stickers on my network. When there's a new firmware version coming up, I like to be able to bulk update all my devices' firmware with a single press of a button. I can do it very, very easily through Xyte, and I don't have to go on site like we used to do a few years ago and plug a USB stick to all those devices behind and load the new firmware. If I do have any kind of an issue, I can remotely reboot the device, I can configure the device, and as mentioned before, I can start tracking even warranties for the devices. Now, warranties is our first feature of our first tracker, but what you'll see in the next couple of weeks is additional trackers for offline assets as well. So let's just say I have a whiteboard or I have some other device that is not a connected device, but I still want to manage that in my platform. I'll be able to do it directly from Xyte, and I'll be able to attach a tracker such as a warranty or service agreement to that specific device. The other great tool for managed service providers is simply being able to manage all of my files here. So I remember working for a system integrator that I used to save all of my wiring diagram on some Dropbox folder and some coding on some other folder. And when I lost my laptop, all the code will be lost as well. Xyte make it a lot easier now for the system integrator to just track everything in a single interface. So I think that's now, Graeme, I hope that to give a good overview to the listener. There's so many more features and capabilities, including, once again, integration to ticketing system, being proactive, unlocking commerce and subscription into the platform. But I think that's the basic, and we'll be obviously be happy to elaborate on calls.
Yeah, that does give a good overview. I like to use the stuff that we make, even now, and I do little installations around the Portland area for friends of mine in restaurants and bars and stuff. And every time I make sure it's claimed devices, so I can look at all of the favors that I've done for friends, and it's invaluable to be able to see. They'll call you up and they'll say the music stopped, and I can see that why the music stopped and everything like that. So that's really useful on even a me level. And I know that our integrators, just today, we were having a Teams conversation about this is quite a big restaurant chain that are just beginning to trial both our gear and your remote monitoring platform. And Risa, one of my techs, was saying, yeah, I've got the device up and running. They had some network issues. I've claimed it on Xyte, so we're good to go now. And it just increases the percentage chance of the system being and remaining usable, and basically giving the customer a better experience. You mentioned just before we went to the demo, tunneling, and that's something that we're looking to implement in the future, so that you'll be able to go in. At the moment, we've given integrators and even end customers, if they choose to set up dashboards, the ability to see what's being played, to recall some presets, to reboot devices, to do firmware updates. So some base level stuff. But ultimately, we'd like people to be able to go in and do as much remotely as they can in network. That would be a really powerful, particularly for people like music curators. We're already working with a number of music services that have well built out cloud platforms. But even for those that don't have well built out cloud platforms, if they can remotely access into our BlueOS software, they'll be able to do curation remotely from their desk. And that would be a really cool thing for music curators to do. The file stuff is, I think, going to be super interesting as we move forward. There's a number of other things I can think about. I should mention that although we're recording this just before ISE, it'll be broadcast after ISE. So unfortunately, I can't ask people to go to your booth. And I don't know if you're doing this year the ice cream that you usually do, which is an excellent reason to go to your booth, if nothing else. But let's finish off by talking about the future and talking about where you think you might go from here, in as much as you can tell us, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I'll just make one comment of what you just said, is that the biggest or the most exciting thing for me as a founder of Xyte is when I see our partners like Bluesound Professional and others simply win more business using the platform. I think a cloud platform is a must today. And we've had some conversation with our customers saying, we had to compete or beat a project, and we won because we had the best cloud platform. So I think that's the best thing that, as a founder, I like to hear from our customer. That's great. To talk a bit about the future, there's so much coming up, right? And once again, the thing is that with a cloud solution like that, there are so many opportunities. I think the biggest thing is, once again, Connect Plus and expanding into the industry, creating a standard for everybody in the industry. And I think what's important is that we really do see ourselves as a platform that needs to enable everybody to benefit from the cloud. So we open more and more APIs for device manufacturers, for system integrators, and for third-party application to interact with the Xyte platform, making it a lot easier and frictionless for really anyone in the industry to benefit from the platform. We're going to invest the next 2 quarters in the managed service providers tools, and making the end user, the MSP interface, a lot more richful with tools and connectors for those system integrators. We obviously keep developing all of the commerce capabilities, and we see some of the vendors starting to offer aftermarket sales, as we discussed before, based on the platform. I think that's the top things that comes to mind. We do develop some partnership that I cannot elaborate on that at the moment, but we're always open for more partnership. Once again, anything that will make you, Graeme, our partners and customers, but also the end customer, happier with the platform. That's our North Star.
Yeah, and obviously our motivation is very similar to yours, to please our customers, and ultimately, in our case, to sell more hardware. Yep. It is interesting seeing you integrate with things that aren't hardware based, like Zoom and Teams and things like that. And I think there'll there'll be more of that in the future, and that's going to be interesting. You brushed over something that has some interest to us in the future, which is hardware as a service. So, particularly in the hospitality and retail market, which is was originally the only market we were going to be targeting. It's turned out that we're selling to a lot more different markets, but still, hospitality and retail market are the core of our business. And in those businesses, again, being able to move to a hardware as a service to impact particularly small to medium-sized business owners' cash flow will be important. And we're looking at various possibilities along there. And when we do that, we'll certainly be looking at Xyte as a way of managing that and providing a secure portal for that. So I think there's a lot of potentially interesting more collaboration that can happen, and I love the way that you're developing. I'm actually so glad to be able to be part of a collaboration with you, having known you so long and having known your dad so long. Is there anything else you'd like to say at the end of this?
No. First of all, thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for inviting me today. It's once again, born and raised in this industry. It's a privilege to take even a small part in helping, evolving, and changing the industry once again. And I think that the revolution of cloud connected devices is obviously already here. It's a must-have, and moving to more and more subscription business model is the next one. And I'm just happy to be part of that and partner with Bluesound Professional. It's absolutely a blast.
Yeah, I think you're doing some really important and exciting work in the industry. And as I say, it's been something that I've been thinking about for decades, and seeing someone come in and actually move it forward is super exciting. So thank you so much, Omer. And to the listeners here, we hope you like this episode and want to listen to more. We have new episodes every Tuesday, and they're available on all of your favorite podcast apps. You'll see them on our socials, and you can find them under Surroundscapes at bluesoundprofessional.com. So, Omer, where's the best place for people to find out more details about Xyte?
The easiest is to go on Xyte, our website, xyte.io. That is xyte.io. Set up a meeting, and this is once again where the benefit of a SaaS platform comes up. We go on a Zoom and we can show you everything over a Zoom call, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and show them how the Bluesound Professional speakers and the other devices can be managed in a unified interface. And we'll be happy for them to reach out.
Okay, thanks so much, and hopefully see you next week, people.